Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Sensational film. In a crystalline nutshell, can you just tell us what the film is about in terms of story and in terms of theme?
Yeah, I'll start. The story of the movie essentially is a cop, a detective that I play, who on the way home from a police celebration has an accident that puts a young child's life in jeopardy. And the real crime that he commits is what he does next, which is he with no witnesses, he lies about his involvement in the crime. Enter the next two main players, Tom Wilkinson and Joel Courtenay, an older and a younger detective who both read between the lines and have different opinions about crime and punishment. And so begins this tangling kind of affair between these three men related to the same accident.
You wrote, produced and star in this film, Joel. Why is this story important for you to tell?
Well, it was very important to me. I'm constantly in my writing exploring the notion of lies and deception, and in this one in particular in focus is punishment. Who has the right and the responsibility to punish, and who has the right and the responsibility to forgive. And I find that this story really resonated with me because I think we're all grappling with the idea of whether we're a good or a bad person, and that any moment we could go from being one to the other, and sometimes in the most tragic and lasting, irreversible fashion.
Matthew, why was the story important for you to get out?
For all of the reasons that Joel's just mentioned, I just, that's philosophically, that's how I believe life is and how we should live our life. Just be careful about who we can judge, how we can judge, and to understand the grey area, and that there is such a thing as human foible and human fallacy, and we've got to give each other a bit of a break sometimes.
There is not a wasted word or a wasted frame in this film. It is one of the tightest dramas I've seen from Australia for a long time. How long did you guys spend working on the screenplay and tightening all those narrative nuts and bolts?
Well, the big early first smart move I made was getting Matthew on board the movie because he felt like this was the right person. He was the right person to handle the delicacy and sensitivity of this material. We started working together in 2008, and we would meet regularly and discuss the draft and where we needed to push it and which direction it needed to head and what was most important in each moment and with each character. And I would go away loaded up with that information and come back like a dog with a tennis ball to Matthew and say, here, this is what we agreed to do, and is it landing in the right way? Then we would have new ideas. And in the evolution, it took us like 3 or 4 years of doing that together, slowly fermenting, and I think that was the benefit. The benefit of that was huge.
Because Joel, just for the record, you are credited as a screenwriter, but in reality, it's kind of co-written or co-developed with the director.
That is always the case. I think if you have that long-standing relationship, is that it's got to have Matthew's. Talking about the crime analogy, it's got to have his fingerprints all over it too, because he's the one who is then captaining the ship once you go into production. So we have to go in there agreeing on all the words and all the ideas. So yes, I was doing the typing, but in that later stage, we were both shaping what it is today.
It's music to my ears to hear you respond to the film in the way that you have. I set a task to everybody that is involved in the film to try and boil it down to one word. What's the one word that defines the film for you? And then I collect all those words and then try and find a common theme. And it was interesting because Joel and I came up with different words. You came up with integrity, and I came up with control, and the DOP came up with darkness. And it's interesting just to sort of, so in terms of the acting style and the writing and the plot, it's about integrity. And in terms of my directorial approach, it was about keeping everything very, very controlled. And the DOP's approach was to play with light and shade. He wanted to show a character go into darkness and then emerge back out into light.
The dynamics you had between the three main characters, articulates very intelligently and very dramatically the difference between ethics and morals.
Yeah.
That's a hard task to do, but you guys pulled it off.
Yeah, I, what I'll say to that, Jim, is that, you know, to me, you know, Matthew describes it as the stages of man, and to me, on one hand, this is an essay about what it's like to move through life, one person moving through life. You know, when I was young, the rules were very important to me. Everything was very much in black and white. You know, there was right and wrong. And these three characters represent the evolution of growing up and understanding when you get to an older time in your life, or loaded up with experience, you can look back and go, the rule book doesn't always work. And there's more grey to life than you maybe first imagined. And each of those characters, there's shifting relationships within one character. Jim's character starts off very idealistic, and there's an evolution of his character learning that he can cause damage, and that there is also a grey that he is going to learn more about.
I remember mentioning a line of dialogue from a Peter Anderson film called Magnolia that I loved and was an influence. That I mentioned to Joel, and he was really struck by it. There's this great line where one of the characters says, you might be through with the past, but the past ain't through with you.
Sidney Lumet, I'm picking up a lot of Sidney Lumet in this film. Prince of the City, Serpico, Courtenay. Was he an influence at all?
Yeah, all of the 70s iconoclasts, you know. I watched those films, you know, on a yearly. Alan J. Pakula's Clute was a huge influence for me on this film.
Screen Australia does such great work, but do you guys look forward to the day when Australian feature films will not need 1 cent of government support? And if so, will you live to see that day?
Oh, I hope so. Look, it's everything that those funding bodies do is great, and I think they're populated by very smart people. It would be great if there also existed a kind of private funded system for Australian films, and it really comes down to the business angle. If we tell great stories and people come and see them, then other people will then open their checkbooks to pay for the next round. You know, at the moment we've got the small business, film business, which we're a part of here, and then you've got Baz Luhrmann and George Miller, and there's not really an in-between. What I'd love to see is an in-between. You know, the $20, $30 million movies get made more often.
I'd love to see, you know, biodiversity. Really, I'd like to see some films that were, you know, clearly made because they had a commercial imperative, and they were looking for that, and that could be supported by private enterprise, and then the public sector could support films that maybe had some other agenda, you know, or a festival film or a documentary or so forth, that might not be able to attract that private funding. I'd like to see both ends of the spectrum.
Right. The unpredictable trail of consequences that comes from speaking up is one of the things that the film deals with. Mm-hmm. Have either of you guys ever opened your mouth and later regretted it?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, but I always come back to the fact that if you tell the truth, then it's up to everybody else to scramble and get into panic, because you've just declared the truth, you know. And sometimes, you know, you're told in life like it's better for you to not tell the truth, and we understand that it's an easier road to begin with. What I love exploring through this movie is that the truth sometimes doesn't appear to be the easy road to begin with. And the lie feels easy, but the lie causes so much damage. And if you could get through life and just go, you know what, I'm going to tell the truth and let everybody else deal with it. Would it be wonderful?
I've honed the faux pas down to a fine art over the years.
Yeah.